Hi guys, today let's get started on learning some physics, the science of how the world works. If you've already noticed, in the world we live in, things tend to move around a lot. So that's what you'll be studying first, the science of motion in a straight line. This is useful for figuring out things like where we are, where we've been, and how we're moving. In order to understand the science of motion, you'll need to understand some important factors that describe our physical place in a universe, factors like time, position, velocity, and acceleration. In order to link these factors together, you'll need a set of equations, also known as the kinematic equations. Let's imagine you're driving on the straight highway, someplace nice and flat. You come across a stop sign, and even though there are no pedestrians or passing cars, you stop. Then after a few seconds, you hit the gas, but as soon as you start to hit the road again, you're pulled over by the police. You're served with a speeding ticket, but how can you tell exactly how fast you were going when the speedometer in your car was broken? That's when the physics of moving in a straight line comes into play. Let's begin by talking about how your car was moving. Driving on the highway is an example of 1D motion because your car can only move back and forth along the line. Instead of describing this motion in terms of speed or direction, we'll describe it with the 4 conditions listed earlier. Time tells you how long you've been traveling for. Position tells you where you are. In 1D motion, you can only move forward or backward, east or west. When doing 1D kinematic problems, you get to decide which direction is positive and which side is negative. East could be positive, while west could be negative, or the other way around. You just need to make sure to remember which side is positive and which side is negative. Because velocity is a vector quantity, a physical quantity that has both specific direction and magnitude, you'll need to include direction when doing such problems. Velocity is the way your position changes over time, where change in position is also known as displacement. In other words, velocity can be defined as the change in displacement per unit time. You may confuse velocity with speed, but unlike velocity, speed is a scalar quantity, meaning it has magnitude but no direction. Average speed is defined as the total distance traveled per unit of time. The unit for velocity, speed, and average speed is meters per second. How do we plot all of these conditions that describe our movement? For us, we use graphs. Graphs are usually presented as displacement vs time, with displacement on the y-axis and time on the x-axis. Let's take a look at a sample problem. You're driving from your house to school and wanted to know your average velocity for a certain period of time, say 4 seconds. All you have to do is take the change in position and divide it by the change in time. Figuring out how much something is changing just means you have to subtract the initial value from the final value. With most physics problems, the first step is to write down all the givens. Once you know all the givens, you start solving for the unknown. Using the table given, you can find the displacement after each second. Since we are only looking at the first 4 seconds, our final time is 4 seconds and our initial time is 0 seconds. That means our final displacement is 12 meters and our initial displacement is 0 meters. Now all we need to do is the calculations. Let's start out by writing the velocity equation. V equals delta d over delta t. And since we know our final displacement is 12, then we subtract it with 0, our initial displacement. Then our final time is 4, our initial is 0, and that equals 12 over 4, which means our velocity is 3 meters per second. When all the data points are graphed, we obtain a dt graph. The slope of the line is equal to the magnitude of the object's velocity. Delta y over delta x equals delta d over delta t, which means our velocity is 3 meters per second. Now that we know a few kinematic equations, you can finally start to use physics to find out whether you were speeding when the cops pulled you over. In today's lessons, you will learn about velocity, speed, and a few kinematic equations in 1D motion. Hope you enjoyed!